Welcome to Inside the Courtroom, the lori-vallow-trial. We are happy you are here with us, following us as we take you inside the courtroom for this incredibly complex and difficult to listen to, difficult to watch trial that both Morgan and Alex have been covering every day throughout the trial. We are now 2.5 weeks in, and we are going to talk about kind of what we have seen on the witness stand this week. And then also, we want to bring you some of that in-depth look and a little bit more of the explanation behind some of the testimony that you've been able to report on the air throughout the week. Hoping to bring you just a little bit of a few more details that you might not get elsewhere. So we're glad you're here with us. Let's get right into it. So what is probably your first takeaway from this week? What's been the biggest kind of information that we've seen?
I think it's been two things, right? Cause of death for JJ, as well as talking about how they allegedly went about murdering Tylee and JJ, as well as the jail video visit between lori-vallow and her sister Summer Shiflett. Those have kind of been the biggest takeaways from this week.
So we'll get to all of that. Let's start with that forensic evidence. First, incredibly gruesome. Very difficult to listen to for you as reporters in that courtroom. But Alex, you said there were some reactions. Let's talk about that first. Like, as people are sitting in there and looking at pictures and listening to these descriptions from these forensic medical examiners and such, how did people respond?
I think that everyone was in shock. I think that there was audible gasps there. We've said this so many times, but people were visibly uncomfortable. When I left the courtroom on the lunch break, people said how disgusted they were, how uncomfortable it was. And honestly, it was just really, really horrible to listen to. We couldn't see some of the pictures that they were showing today because the judge said that it might be inflammatory, so he didn't put it up on the big screen. But we definitely heard very, very detailed testimony about what supposedly happened to the children.
And the testimony focused on primarily how the two children, JJ and Tylee, were killed. Is that correct? Or what they couldn't tell us about how they died.
Right. We saw photos yesterday, too. Yesterday was really focused on Tylee's burial site. I think today got into JJ's burial site more and how they found him. We did see photos yesterday in court when an FBI special agent, Steve Daniels, was on the stand, and they were the same photos that you guys saw earlier on in the trial, so corroborating what some other law enforcement officials had said. Ray Hermosillo, the lead detective from Rexburg PD in this case, and those were really gruesome. Those were... Again, we don't want to get into the details because a lot of people watching this, it may be very triggering. It's very sensitive. It's gruesome. It's graphic. But the way in which Tylee's body was dismembered and burned, and again, as we've talked about on this show, they described it as masses of human flesh. And you can't, at the time when you're searching and digging this up, tell what it is. There's mounds of flesh in a green bucket next to a skull, and so they know that this is a human. These are human remains, and that's all they know at the time. And then they have to send it off to an examiner and a specialist, and that's when they can determine, what this is exactly. But they haven't been able to disclose how Tylee died exactly, but today they did, for the first time in this case, disclose how JJ died. Yeah,
so the medical examiner, the chief medical examiner in Ada County, we know that Fremont County has a contract with Ada County, and so they sent the children's remains over here. And his name is Garth Warren, and he was the one that examined the children. He examined them on June 11th, 2020, so that was just 3 days after they were found. And he first examined JJ. He determined that JJ died from asphyxiation due to the plastic bag that was duct taped around his head. And what's interesting is that he kind of came to this from excluding other things. Okay. So he did a tox report. He did, he did oral swabs. He did anal swabs. He did, all those things that you're supposed to do in an autopsy. And basically by eliminating everything, he was like, yes, this plastic bag is how he died because everything else doesn't make sense. There's no other indication of how he died.
And asphyxiation being the lack of oxygen.
Yes.
So cutting off the oxygen.
Suffocation.
Right, suffocation. And also the duct tape, right?
Right.
JJ found with duct tape bound.
Let's point out that that's also how they say Tammy Daybell died. So there's
Right.
3 people in this case that were allegedly murdered: JJ, Tylee, and Tammy, which is Chad Daybell's late wife. Allegedly, that's how she died, or not allegedly. That is what
right.
an examiner said. That is how she died, was asphyxiation, and it was a homicide.
Right.
Right. And so, again, just it was kind of interesting seeing him explain in such a formal, like very poised way about this, because a lot of people really couldn't handle it. But to be honest, he was very, very professional. And he was questioned by John Thomas, the defense, Lori-Vallow's defense attorney. And it was kind of this back and forth for a little while, and it seemed very tense.
Like a heated
in a way.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And John Thomas was like, well, I don't know how you can rule that the plastic bag was the cause of death when you didn't examine the nasal cavity. Shouldn't there be microplastics in his nasal cavity? Honestly, that's a fair question. But Warren came back and was like, well, because I eliminated everything else, this wouldn't happen. Like, there wouldn't be microplastics in his nasal cavity because it's about a lack of oxygen. It's not about the plastic bag. It's about what's in it. And that there's just no oxygen in the bag, right? So they kind of got into this back and forth.
Essentially saying, that doesn't have to happen. That
Yes.
doesn't have to be there in order for there to be asphyxiation.
Yes.
So there was a flawed assumption there on Thomas's part. And he said where he got that, right?
He said, well, I'm basing this off of what I've seen in movies. And Warren goes, that's scary. And everyone kind of just was like, oh man, and they still kind of went back and forth, and Thomas kept pushing him, and he goes, well, what are you basing this off of? And he goes, my knowledge. And he still kept asking why there was no plastic in there, and Warren kept reiterating, you're not breathing in plastic, you're breathing in air. And then the air is no longer there because there's a lack of oxygen, and boom, you're...
And so almost trying to, clearly it seems to try to discredit this witness, but it sounds like the witness held firm and said, I guess it seems a little odd that the defense attorney is saying, well, I saw it on a movie, and obviously he's answering with, mine comes from my experience and my knowledge and my education, my to expertise.
Play devil's advocate here, I think that maybe, it might help to kind of relate to the average person who sees this stuff on TV.
Sure.
Because and I don't know, but like coming from people who have no idea about this case and who's just the average Joe sitting on a jury, maybe seeing something in movies or whatever might actually relate to them in some way. And so maybe that was what John Thomas was doing. We have no idea. But that comment, I think, got a little bit misconstrued.
That's not scientific evidence, though, and that's the problem with this case, is that everybody wants to be a detective. Everybody watches CSI and all these shows that give them these sort of preconceived notions about how a trial should go, what evidence should look like, and that has continued to come up, right?
Well, and if you are talking about people who assume this, I think then I guess maybe that would have been helpful or beneficial, perhaps, had the witness not been able to answer that definitively. Again, draw that question mark. Potentially, that's where he was going. It didn't happen. It sounds like.
Right.
Sounds like he was able to say no. That is not. The absence of plastic in JJ's nose does not equal. He didn't die of asphyxiation.
Because there was nothing else to indicate how he died in the first place.
Yes. And going back to Tylee, there's no way. You were sitting in court today. I was not there today, but there is no way that they are able to determine how she died. They burned her body. They cut her in half, or that's how she was found. So kind of going now to Tylee's remains, because like you said, it was just fleshy and bone. Like there's no. Warren said, I did not have a body to work with. With JJ, I had something to work with. His organs were intact, but there's her remains arrived in 3 different evidence bags. Gosh.
And, each one had something else in it. And he said there were organs. He found a heart. Oh. He found a kidney, some lungs, like they were kind of attached. But they were so shrunken and burned. He said, this is not what a normal heart looks like to the jury. Like, if this is what you think a heart looks like, it's not it. But I can identify that as her heart.
So they were limited by the amount of testing they could do and what kind of evaluation forensically they could do. So they sent that then out to an even more robust expert. Is that right?
Yeah, they did. So he actually determined her death was homicide by unspecified means. So he says, I can definitively tell you this was murder. I can. But I cannot tell you how or why. Because there's nothing there. You know, it's so, you don't have a whole body to work with. You have nothing. You have flesh and bone. And that's honestly fair. He said he looked for, you know, like a bullet, anything, debris, nothing, just mud and dirt is what he found. And, you know, the bones were eventually cleaned and they sent it to this FBI forensic anthropologist in Quantico, Virginia. Her name's Angie Christensen. And she is a complete specialist in this area. And so she said she had all these bones to work with. She received more than 100 pieces of bone fragments, and she tried as much as she could to piece them together. And she said all the major parts of the skeleton were represented in the remains. She said you had the cranium, you had the arms, you had the legs, you had the pelvis, right? And the most important part of her testimony was that we now know that someone or something took a sharp object or some type of object to Tylee's pelvic and pubic region. And those areas had, I think she said one bone had 5 sharp trauma injuries to that bone specifically. And the injuries were so deep, they were on both sides. So that indicates to her that they had gone all the way through.
Wow. And
so, and we, you know, your pelvic and pubic region is below your belly button. So that's basically the center of you. And there was also a jawbone. She still had some teeth. There was a left and right femur she was observing. And she said that it seemed like her face, one side of her face was less burned than the other side. So it could be possible she was laying on one side. Maybe, you know, it really just depends. But just based on, you know, some bones were more charred and burned than the other ones. But another interesting thing is that she said these injuries are not typical with dismemberment.
Interesting.
So, and I know we have all joked about seeing, you know, the shows and all that stuff, but from everything that we've all seen and what she testified to also is that usually in dismemberment cases, you or somebody would cut at the joint because it's easier that way. And that's very, very gruesome, but that's how she explained it, because that's the easiest way to get a body part off of your body, to put it lightly. But that's not what happened in this case.
Interesting.
So she just said this is all in the pelvic region. There's, you know, it doesn't make much sense that you would dismember somebody in the middle of their body.
And they didn't offer no discussion about why that may be or what that may mean, just that it is.
And honestly, I don't think she could testify to that because, you know, she's not an expert in psychology.
Sure.
But she, you know, and she's going to be on the stand again tomorrow. We didn't obviously finish her testimony, but it is very, very bizarre.
Yeah. And potentially we'll see more of that or hear more of that. Potentially there will be some, you know, evidence, but we just don't know yet if there will suggest potentially why that was.
Yeah.
They didn't show photos today to the gallery or the jurors, but they showed these photos before in the trial. So I'm wondering why.
No, so they didn't actually show the forensic anthropologist photos.
Okay.
So these photos came from her. And so what happened today is that, you know, the jury and prosecution and defense got to see all these photos. And mind you, Lori's head was down the whole time.
Okay.
I was going to ask what she
her
did.
demeanor.
Yeah, and it seemed like she was crying at some points and then laughing at other times. I wasn't really quite sure. But basically, these photos, more in-depth photos of JJ's body were shown, and they were not shown to the gallery. However, Tylee's remains were shown to the gallery, and they were her bones, and they were the marks. And
but this is including the jurors as well. So
Yes.
if the gallery's not seeing it, then the jurors aren't seeing it.
No, the jury
they
was
had it
seeing
on their
They
computer.
had it on their screens.
Okay, but we didn't have it on the projector screens.
No, because
That's
it was
the difference.
inflammatory. And the judge just said because the screen is so big, it would just be prejudicial and inflammatory. And honestly, like that's a fair point because
magnifies it, obviously.
magnifies
Yeah.
the
Right.
injuries and the autopsy.
And the jury is who, as the judge knows and is quick to point out, the jury is who has to see it.
Yeah.
It's not that you're not a part of the process, and not that he's not sharing that with the public, but there is nothing that says they have to see every piece of that evidence in order for it to be considered.
Right.
So.
And yesterday, we were shown more photos of Chad Daybell's property, of Tylee's remains, the burned flesh, the green bucket, the skull that they dug up. That special agent with the FBI who continued his testimony today ended the day testifying to how they planned their search of Chad Daybell's property. They got a search warrant, he said, a week in advance. So they were able to take satellite imagery and decide the areas that they wanted to hone in on. And then they based it off of cell phone records, so text messages, geolocation history. And then they were able to use all that digital evidence to pinpoint certain areas. So they looked at the fire pit, they looked at the pet cemetery. When they got on the property, they did an analysis and a survey of the property, and they were able to look at also the pond. So they found the burial sites, the 2 different burial sites there on Chad Daybell's property. When they got there, Chad Daybell was on site. He testified to that. So that was what happened yesterday.
And worth noting
the
that
end.
Chad Daybell had texted his wife saying, I shot a raccoon and buried it in the pet cemetery
wife,
around the
Tammy.
time
Right.
that Tylee went missing.
That very much, that was what tipped them off to the pet cemetery, was, as we've reported before in this trial, that he texted her, I'm going to burn some limbs, so there's going to be a fire. I shot a raccoon, there's going to be gunshots. So they had all this evidence that led them to that location.
And a burial.
And a burial. And
Yeah.
this was months later, right?
Yeah.
So they were allegedly killed early September as well as end of September. This was June of 2020.
And that's what so piece that timeline very quickly. So we do believe that JJ and Tylee were killed at different times
points.
and different. So at some point, JJ was without his sister.
Right.
And we wonder, I mean, you can't help but
What was he
wonder, what
told?
was that explanation?
Right.
Was he told the same lies that were being told to other relatives, or to, was he told that JJ was at school, or was
I think
Tylee-
another
Tylee,
like,
sorry, rather,
another
Tylee,
good
yes.
question is like how, I mean, were they killed there, or were they killed somewhere else?
Right.
And how did they get there?
Right.
How were they lured there, if that's the case? Like, how did they end up in that backyard? And we just, I don't know if we'll know, but
Right.
that's also another thing the prosecution might have to somehow piece together,
Right.
or because we know the prosecution has said, Alex Cox was Lori-Vallow's protector, and phone records show that Alex Cox was in that backyard around the times the children went missing. So,
the day after JJ was last seen.
and the children were with Alex the day before they went missing too. So we don't know.
Just to remind people to not assume that everybody knows too, is they have said that Lori has an alibi. She was not in town when Tammy was killed. She was at her own apartment when she says the children were killed at her brother's, Alex Cox's, neighboring apartment. So they essentially, the theory is that Alex is their fall guy. He even said that to his own wife the day before he died in December of 2019. So they were able to testify to his geolocation history and his cell phone records, showing that he was the only phone that went back and forth between Lori's apartment, his apartment complex as well, and Chad Daybell's property when around the time that JJ was last seen.
And Monday, we got a lot of that information about those cell phones. But kind of adding to that idea that there was a lot of planning,
Yes.
And there was a lot of conspiracy potentially. There was a lot of, collaboration.
Right.
Were the fact that they were using multiple devices.
Yes, they got a search warrant. A police officer testified to the fact that he obtained 18 search warrants for electronic devices associated with Lori Vallow, and they testified, laid it all out to all the different numbers that were activated on Chad's behalf, on Alex Cox's behalf, on Lori Vallow's behalf, and the communication among them. Now, also important to point out, and the defense asked about this explicitly, there is nothing in these text messages that says, will you kill my children?
Right.
There is no direct evidence saying, will you kill my children? I want to kill my children. And so that, presumably is what the defense is going to say in their closing arguments. There is nothing that says Lori Vallow asked somebody to kill her children. But these are conversations that, of course, prosecutors say they could have had in person, that there's not going to be digital footprints of these. But they are able to track and trace digital footprints to and from properties around the time that they believe that the kids were killed. Mm-hmm. And I want to point out something from yesterday that is really, really important before we have to wrap up, or at least before I have to jolt. Summer Shiflett Lori Vallow's younger sister, 2 years younger than Lori, testified yesterday. Very emotional. A couple minutes into her testimony, she started crying. The prosecutors asked her, when did you talk to your sister about the kids? And she said in February, after she was arrested in 2020. And her sister told her, the kids are safe. I know where they are. And the prosecutors asked, did you trust your sister? And she said, yes. And then they said, after the bodies were found on Chad Daybell's property, did you still believe your sister? She said, no, I felt I was lied to, and my trust in my sister was broken. And then they played a jail video visit. We didn't see any video. I don't know if their cameras were turned off or if prosecutors removed that as part of this evidence, but they played a jail video visit between Summer and Lori, and you guys, it is gut-wrenching. Like, you just hear the anguish in Summer's voice as she is
desperate.
Yeah. She is sobbing uncontrollably in the beginning. She is pleading with her sister to give her answers, and Lori is so calm.
That's how she reacted with Colby, her son,
Yes.
too, in a similar phone call.
Exactly.
So
we have some of
two
that.
people now.
We have 2 people now whose video visits we've heard, or at least the audio we've heard from jail, and Lori doesn't give any sort of indication that she knows what happened.
Well, she says, I know, but I can't tell you.
I know, yeah, no indication that, that she played a role, right? So it's really difficult. She says, I can't talk about it. And you can imagine being somebody's sister who loves your sister, thinks you know your sister.
And had initially defended her.
Publicly.
Gone out on to media stories, done interviews nationally, and said, I'm standing behind her, along with Lori's mom.
Yeah.
Who have both since
Taking it back.
Ever since the kids' bodies were found on
Exactly.
Lori's husband's property months after they went missing. And Summer even said, you cut me off.
Yeah.
Would you even be talking to me if you weren't in jail? Because Lori requested this video visit with Summer. And Summer in the beginning was like, I don't know what to say. So we have the beginning of this. I think we're going to play the first 6 minutes of this call so you guys can take a listen to it for yourselves.
How are you? Not good. How are you? Not good. I don't know what to say. I'm willing to listen if you want to talk to me. I just don't know what to say. you. You cut me and Mom off for 4 months and told everyone not to trust us because we tell Adam. And now we find this out and you expect me to just keep going on faith when there's been zero explanation and you expect me to just keep believing without ever having a question? Say that. That is what you're saying. Either explain it or don't expect me to not be upset and tell you when the kids are on Chad's property. I'm not okay. I love them with all my heart. I would have taken Tylee and JJ in a heartbeat, and everybody else would have too. You know that. You have no if they were in any danger. You're right. Nobody does because you said nothing. Because everybody sees what's on TV. That's it. That has nothing to do with TV. This is your and my conversations. Before you left and cut me off. And now you expect me to be there for you when you were going to abandon me. And if you weren't in jail, you wouldn't even be talking to me. And we wouldn't even know they were dead still. This is your day. Yes! I deserve more than that. I've been there for you like a rock. And I went on TV and defended you. I've done everything to defend you. And I still would right now if you would tell me the truth. I would love to. I would love well, then, you didn't want to in October, November, December, January, or February when you weren't in jail. Why didn't you tell us then? Why you didn't call me when Alex died, which now I'm glad he's gone, if he was a part of this, but you didn't call to tell me Alex died or that your kids are gone? Nothing. You don't think that's going to cause pain throughout our entire family? Yes, you really did. You don't think I did? No, I don't. I think you were dancing on the beach having a great time. Getting married. And you took pictures to prove your kids don't deserve a burial, but you need to get wedding pictures? You don't think that's upsetting?
So there was another
Wow.
point in there where Summer said the same thing about you were dancing on a beach, having a great time, getting married to Chad. And Lori said, that was later. Whatever that means. I mean,
Yeah.
she said very little, you heard, and she said nobody knows. Nobody knows. There's an explanation, as you heard. I can't talk about it. That call was about 10 minutes long. We heard, 6 minutes of it, but you can just hear how desperate she is and how that grows to just anger.
Yeah.
She is livid that she's not getting anything out of
Very
her sister.
similar, like you said, to what Colby
Colby.
experienced. And it seems the affect of Lori, I mean, very, very cold, very matter of fact.
Yeah.
That's what you think. That's all you know is what's on TV, right?
And it's like, I know, and I'm okay, and everyone else is okay, and I'll explain it at another time. But this family is grieving. They want answers right now, and as anybody would.
And these, also what we didn't hear in that call, but you guys can listen to it on our YouTube page right now. We have the full call up, her full testimony. In fact, she says, Lori, there is nothing in Scripture that says hurting children is a godly thing. And I'm paraphrasing, but she essentially said, Jesus never said you should hurt children. There is nothing Christ-like, is what she said, about that. And then she said, and Lori, I know you're a spiritual person, but Chad's teachings are a lie. These are lies. She says that later in the call. And that, I think, has been the theme through trial, as
Right.
we've heard people testify to, is Lori was already having these more extreme religious beliefs, veering off into the fringe of the LDS faith, going to Preparing Good People conferences. And, it wasn't until she met Chad, though, that she started believing in these dark and light scales. And Summer Shiflett testified to that in her cross-examination with the defense. Jim Archibald asked her, what was Lori's religious belief like? And her and Alex both. And Summer Shiflett said it wasn't until late 2018, after they met Chad Daybell, that they started believing in zombies and these sorts of things. And Jim Archibald also asked her, and this I thought was really powerful, he said, could you ever imagine your sister doing anything like this?
Mm-hmm.
And she said no. And could you ever imagine your sister wanting to kill her kids? No. Could you imagine her wanting to conspire to kill her kids? And Summer said no. And she said she was a loving mother. Her kids adored her. She said Tylee was sassy at times, but Lori was really patient with her. So this is somebody that, it appears from Summer's testimony in that call, she doesn't even know
Yeah.
who her sister is
Well,
anymore.
and she even said that, right? I mean,
It's very
the
clear she
quote
changed
was-
her mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had that happen to them, which is an interesting way to word that, if you had that happen to them and didn't tell us and put them in the ground like a piece of trash, then I don't know you.
Then I don't know you.
Yeah.
She says, no, you still do, you
And
know.
interesting that she also points out that she didn't even know Alex had died. So this is her brother, right? I mean, so again, that disconnect extended obviously to Alex, but most of us can't imagine a scenario where we wouldn't know our sibling.
It just seems like the three
Wasn't
of
dead.
them were living in a bubble, according to like what the prosecution has laid out, is that they were just so interconnected with one another and isolating themselves from everybody else that you know maybe it went too far, and we just don't know yet.
Summer also said that her and Alex were close, and there's 5 siblings. And she said her and Alex were close, but Alex got in a car accident as a teenager, and that his decision making he was regressed, or he essentially was stunted at the age of 16, is what she said. So that was an interesting line of
That is
questioning from
interesting.
the cross as well. Again, going back to this theory that Alex is the one who carried out
Right.
these alleged murders.
At the hands of this explanation that he was actually doing the work of God,
Right.
Potentially.
Based on the blessing that Chad
Right.
gave. Yeah.
And we still don't know exactly what the circumstances were surrounding the kid's death.
Sure.
We still don't know, you know, how, like, in what way they died. Like, for example, Tylee, we don't know if this is, you know, going to sound really brutal. We don't know if, you know, she was potentially dismembered while she was alive.
Where was she?
We know that
Right.
she wasn't burned alive. We know that from testimony today, and we don't know. And we also know that JJ had scratches on the side of his neck, and the medical examiner said, I think that he was trying to take the bag off of his head. And so it's just,
They suffered.
yeah, what they suffered, I think, is like the most important thing,
Yeah.
you know, to come
Yeah.
out of this is like at the end of this, at some point, there has to be justice for JJ, for Tammy, for
Tylee.
Tylee, and
Yeah. And so lots more to come in this trial. 2.5 weeks into what we believe is going to be 8 to 10 weeks. We'll talk about that timeline. We'll be back here with you on Friday. We'll continue to hear more about this testimony and take you inside the courtroom for the Lori-Vallow trial.